So this is a tutorial on how to make this really nice kind of slouchy, soft sweater. And yes, this is crochet. Let me try it on so you guys can see what it looks like. So one of my main gripes with crochet sweaters is that they tend to be really like stiff, and I think that's why a lot of people knit sweaters instead of crocheting them. I feel like people knit cardigans more, just because they're a little bit more structured, but I really like the way that crochet sweaters look. I just think it takes a specific pattern and technique to really get it to be soft and slouchy and pretty. So I'll give you an example. So for example, this one, it's the same pattern, it's just cropped, but I used more of like a rough acrylic yarn, and it's a little bit, it's still got the same vibes, but it's a little bit more hard. I don't know, like it's not as soft as this one. So I would just caution that whatever yarn you're going to use, you pick something that's soft. For example, this is the mandala yarn from Walmart. Like this yarn is actually really soft. It's pretty affordable too. I need about, depending on the size, they have a few different sizes. I need 2 or 3 of these to make one sweater. So just keep that in mind. But this time, I'm going to be using this Bernat, I don't know how you say that, baby sport yarn. This is acrylic, but it doesn't feel cheap. I don't know if that makes sense. This is size 3 light. But you can honestly use this with any yarn. Just know that the softer the yarn, the softer the sweater is going to be. And I think the secret weapon of getting this desired look of like a soft crochet sweater is not only the soft yarn, but using a large crochet hook. Now, maybe this is controversial, but I find that using a bigger hook actually makes the sweater so much more, like, movable. Like, it has movement. It's not so stiff. Just be aware that there are going to be some holes, you know, but, like, you guys can tell. You can't really see, like, my sports bra underneath this. Like, you can't really tell. So this is an 8mm hook. This is what I've used for pretty much all of these sweaters. As you can see, I've made quite a few of them, and I use the same size. And the nice thing about this sweater, too, I'll show you one second, is you can also just not put the sleeves, and you can make it into an off-the-shoulder t-shirt. So let me show you that. Sorry. Okay. So this is technically like, wow, okay. This is technically like 2 tutorials in one. So this is what you're left with if you don't add the sleeves. So this is kind of like a fun summer like sweater off-the-shoulder little top. So just keep that in mind if you actually do this and you realize that you just like it as a shirt. Just leave it as a shirt. That's what happened with this one. And then I had to make another one, but the same yarn as a sweater because I like them both. So just know that this pattern, once you do it once, it's so easy to redo it over and over, and it's kind of addicting. I've made so many of these sweaters. So 8mm hook, a nice soft yarn, and you'll need some stitch markers, scissors, a measuring tape, all of the normal things that you need with any crochet project. We'll get started. Also, I forgot to mention, so all you need to know how to do for this tutorial is single crochet or just do a chain, and then double crochet. Like, that's pretty much it. And then obviously like slip stitch, stuff like all the normal things that you need to start a crochet project, like slip stitch, the chain, and then I use all double crochet through the whole thing. So, yeah, that's all you need to know how to do. And then obviously just to like measure yourself, which, I mean, most people know how to do that. Okay.
The first step we're going to take is we're going to measure how big we want the chain to be that's going to create the top of the sweater. So the way that this sweater works is you start from the top. So what you're going to do is you're going to measure underneath your armpits. So you can just take a measuring tape, or you can try. Take a measuring tape and then measure where your armpits are all the way around. And mine is about 34.5. So that's my initial chain that I'm going to make. So depending on what you measure, that's like how long you want to make it. So for mine, I'm going to make a chain that reaches 34.5 inches. And the thing too is you want to make sure the chain, when stretched, is at that length. Like, you don't want it to be too big because then it's going to fall off the shoulder, unless you really want like more of an off the shoulder look, like very slouchy. Like, this is already kind of a slouchy and off the shoulder sweater, but it's not like aggressively off the shoulder. So if you want that look, you're more than welcome to, but I would recommend like the chain stretched is about the size of around underneath your armpits. Okay, so I have my yarn. We're going to start with a chain. So just have your measuring tape on standby because you're going to have to measure how long this chain needs to be. So I will chain and then kind of measure. Personally, I don't count these stitches, but if you want to remake this, you definitely can. Just know that if there's a different weight of yarn, it may be a little different. Okay, Okay, so I've done a chain, I'm stretching it, and it's about 34.5, which is where I want it to be. So once you get there, this is when you want to stop the chain and move on to the next step. Okay, so now we are going to connect these two ends to make a circle. So how you want to do that is you just want to make sure that your chain has absolutely no twists in it, because it will cause problems when you're trying to end the row, and it will look like it's upside down. So to connect these two, you're going to put your hook into this first loop right here, and then the yarn connected to the skein, you're going to pull through and do a slip stitch into both of these chains, like this. And then from here, you're going to do a chain 2, and this is going to be the start of our row. So you'll do a double crochet, and you won't skip this first stitch, you'll go into this one. So your first stitch will go into this, do a double crochet, and then you'll double crochet into every single stitch all the way around. Some people will twist and go through the bump at the top. Personally, I just go through the center of the stitches, but you're going to do a double crochet into every single stitch until you reach the other end of this chain. Okay, so I only have a few stitches left, so I'm just going to go into the last few to show you how you end each row. Oops. Okay, so that was the last stitch. When you get here, you see this is the chain 2 that we did at the beginning of this row. You don't need to go into the stitch here because we already have the chain 2 that counts as the last stitch. So you'll just, and not into any of this chain, but into the next stitch, you'll do a slip stitch to close it up like this. And then to start a new row, you do the same thing, you do a chain 2, and you go into this one right here, the very first stitch, and you do a double crochet. That's how you're going to start every single row and how you're going to end every single row. So you're going to keep going around and do a double crochet into every single stitch until you have 9 rows done. So you'll want to do 8 rows total around, and you can always count them just by counting each row. And then when you've got to the 8 rows, you're going to put a stitch marker on your working yarn, and then we're going to add in the armholes. So to add in the armholes, this is what we're going to do. You're going to need a measuring tape, and you're going to go ahead and measure how long it is across. So for me, it is about 15 and a half inches. So what I'll do in order to calculate for the armholes is I will divide whatever number I get in inches across by 4. So for me, 15 and a half divided by 4 is between 3 and 4 inches, and I'm gonna say 3 and a half, just because I know my size already. But 15 and a half divided by 4 is actually like 3.8, but I'm gonna round down a little bit and do 3.5. So when you calculate that, you're gonna look at the measuring tape, and wherever that number is, you're gonna put a stitch marker. So for me, it's about right here. So I'll add in the stitch marker, and then we're going to do on the other side as well. I'm just going to make sure this is equal. Okay, so 3 and a half is about right here. You're going to turn it on the other side like so, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to measure about 2.5 or 3.5 inches or whatever number you got, and you're going to put the stitch markers on that side as well. So I see this one is about here. And you can also just use like the other side stitch markers to give you an idea as well. Okay. Also count the stitches on each side to make sure they're equal. I just like to do that just to be sure and make sure, so it's going to be equal on both sides. So I'm going to count really quick all of these stitches between the 2 stitch markers and those stitches here between the 2, and I'm going to make sure that they match. If not, I might move one of the stitch markers left or right depending on if they're uneven, but you can also just do it like this. There's no big deal if you need to change it, or or if you like to just keep it like this. So now I've got my stitch markers. I would recommend counting because you're going to need that number for the next round. So for me, the stitches right here, I counted them, and there were 17 between both arms over here. So now we're going to move on to adding in the armholes. So we're going to start the round just like we would normally, and we're going to start with a chain 2. We're going to double crochet into the first stitch, and then you're going to go until you reach your first stitch marker. Okay, so we're almost to my first stitch marker. So what you're going to do is you're going to slip stitch into this one. So just pull and then pull through here like this. Next, you're going to chain whatever number was in between the 2 stitch markers. So for me, it was 17, so I'm going to chain 17. Okay, so once you have chained 17, you're going to connect it to the next stitch marker by doing another slip stitch. So you're going to put it through, pull it, slip, stitch. And then you can take off these stitch markers that only if you've already gone through them. So once you've slip stitched into that one that had the stitch marker, you're going to just continue double crocheting into the next stitch, and then keep going all the way around until you reach your next stitch marker. Okay, so I'm almost to the next stitch marker. And you're going to repeat the same thing you did with the other ones. You're going to slip stitch into this, and then you're going to chain the number that was between these 2 stitches. So again, 17. And then when you've chained those 17, you're going to slip stitch into the next chain marker. Oops. And like the other side, you're going to just continue by crocheting and double crocheting into the next stitch, and then you're going to go until you end the round. And then when you get to the end, you'll just end it the same way. You'll just crochet to these last 2. And then you don't do this one, you'll just slip stitch into this right here. Okay, and then let me go ahead and put a stitch marker so I can show you. It will look like this. And I know this looks kind of weird, but this is what it will look like. But I want to just show how you'll want to try this on before you continue, because because everybody's bodies are different, so where your armholes may not be the best for somebody else. So what you'll do is you'll put your arms through these little holes and then put it over your head, and you'll want to make sure that it fits correctly. So if these are too tight, you might need to add in a few chains, or if they feel fine, then you can continue. So also, especially since this is off the shoulder, that's where you'll want to put it when you try it on. But as you can see, this fits fine, so I'm going to continue on with the next step. So once you have done the chains and you've tried it on and it feels right, then we'll move on to the next part. If it felt too tight, you don't have to undo this whole row. You can just undo the chains and add more chains. You don't have to go and undo and put in different stitch markers unless this area right here is too short, and then you'll want to move these. But anyways, when you are done, we're going to move on to the next row. So you'll want to take your stitch marker out. We're starting this row the same way as all the others, and where is it? We'll do a chain 2, and then you'll crochet until you get to this chain. So once you get to the chain, then we'll move on from here. What I do is I do go into the stitch right here, just so that there's not a hole when you start doing the arms. Then you're gonna, I know it's a little bit difficult, but you're gonna go through every chain in this chain across. So you want to make sure you do the same number, so you don't end up with more stitches on one side than the other. And this part does take a little bit of patience, just because we all know it's hard to stitch into a chain. But you're going to stitch, or you're going to double crochet all the way across. So I've made it to the end of the chain, and again, I know that this one is really small, but same way as the other side, I'm going to chain into this just to make sure that there's no holes when we add in the sleeves. And then you're just going to continue double crocheting all the way until you get to the next chain, and you're going to do the same exact thing until you get to the end of your round. So when you get to the end of the round, you're going to end it just like the previous rows. And then, then you're going to continue doing the same exact thing, doing a row all the way around of double crochets. And obviously when you get to the arms, you're just going to go across like this. And you're going to want to do this a total of 19 more times. So like this counts as kind of like the first row. You're going to have 20 rows by the end. Unless you prefer it be cropped, you can stop sooner. Or if you want to make it really long, you can even make this into a dress. It's entirely your choice. This is like a super versatile pattern. So whatever you want to do, if you need it to be shorter, if you have a shorter torso and you want it to be shorter, just do less rows. If you have a longer torso and you want it to be longer, add more rows. But to add the sleeve, just come back when you've finished those 19 more rows. So when you have finished with all of the rows, then we'll move on to adding the sleeves. So I usually like to enter here through the back. I think it just looks better back there, and if you mess up or something, then at least it's in the back where no one can see. And then we're gonna do a slip knot. And then you're gonna take your hook, put it in that hole, and pull this through. Then you're going to chain 2 and double crochet into this stitch. Then you're going to double crochet into every stitch all the way around the arms until you get back to this spot. So when you are getting to the end here, I only have a couple stitches left. I'll show you how to start the new row. It's exactly the same as the body. So when you get here, you'll just slip right into this top part and then chain 2, double crochet into the same stitch, and double crochet all the way around. And you're going to do this however many times until you reach the perfect length for your sleeves. For my super slouchy one that I made, I think it was like around 36 rows. If you have shorter arms though, it may be way less than that. So whatever is the correct length for you and your body, or if you want it super long, if you want them super short, it's up to you. But I'll probably end up doing like 34 rows for this one. But when you're done with all those rows, you're just gonna like cut the yarn, pull the yarn through, make a slip knot, and then you're going to do the same for the other arm. And then once you finish the other arm, you're done. All you have left to do is weave in the ends. So once you're finished weaving in all the ends, you are done. So I hope that it turned out really cute and that you love it. If you have any other questions, just put it in the comments. But I hope you really enjoyed this pattern and your sweater turned out amazing.